everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Leandra the TBR0, and my goal is to lessen my physical TBR because it has gotten out of control. I hope you all are doing well. I thought that this would just be a very relaxed sit-down video, hopefully one take. We're gonna see how it goes, but I wanted to talk about my rating system and why I rate books 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 stars. There are definitely more options for rating them beyond 1 and 5 stars. I know that there's CAWPILE, which was originating from Book Roast over on that side of booktube, and it's far more sophisticated. It really allows you to really delve into what aspects of a book that you really enjoy, whether it's character, setting, and the like. So if you are interested in a more sophisticated rating system, I highly recommend you check that out. But I also have friends who do it through a 10-star rating system, which I think is fascinating, and it does allow for a bit more wiggle room beyond, say, is it a 4 or is it a 3? Well, that's the debate between a 6 and an 8. Well, you can give them a 7 then, and then it makes everyone happy. We also obviously have half-star ratings or quarter-star ratings. For me, though, I just have decided to kind of keep it simple, and I do utilize the solid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars, because for me, the star rating is for myself. I suppose it's helpful for others when I tell them what my star rating is, but I would usually tell them if I recommend them the book either way, because hopefully I know the reader that I'm talking to. I'll ask them more questions, I'll figure out what they're interested in, and then even if I end up giving a book a 3-star rating, that in no way means that I don't think they'll have a 5-star rating out of it. So I kind of like to keep my star ratings a bit personal if someone's asking me because they're thinking about reading the book, because it's really not about my star rating unless our reading preferences are super similar. But beyond that, it's mainly for me to remember how this book made me feel. I actually ended up reaching out to a few friends on Instagram, asking them, hey, what are your thoughts on a 5-star read? Why would you give a book 5 stars? What would be the qualities that you are expecting of it? And we all kind of agreed on the same elements. One, the difference between a 4 and a 5, for instance, is very much vibe. It's very much an additional texture to the book, additional layers, where for whatever reason, a 4-star is solid. It is great. We love it. But the 5-star is that little extra something that often is related to emotions, into the fact that we are not even knowing that we're reading a book anymore. That's how invested we are. We're invested in the characters to the point where if they were real, we would care about them so much. They would be our friends. They'd be our family. There's also obviously good plotting that matches the genre as well, because a 5-star rating, say for a romance, I am not comparing that to a 5-star rating in fantasy or mystery, because the elements involved are completely different. So I can't say that a 5-star is the same all around. It's very much dependent on the genre, what the genre is known for, what I'm looking for in that particular genre when it comes to an emotional response, what I'm trying to get out of it. Is it escape? Is it information? Especially when we're bringing in nonfiction. I think nonfiction is a bit of an anomaly in itself, because it has its own subgenres within nonfiction. And yeah, you end up picking up a nonfiction book for different purposes, for different educational or informative reasons. So why not apply that to fiction as well? I know that Autumn over at Nose in the Book, she ended up saying that for her, among other reasons, one great reason for her to give a 5-star read is, yeah, this emotional response where it does make her cry, where it just really is like this overly charged emotional experience. And I really liked that, because one of my reasons for giving a book a 5-star, one of my main reasons that I ask myself is, would I reread this? Would I gladly reread this and enjoy these characters, enjoy this story again? And so when it comes to those types of emotions where it makes you cry, it's heart-wrenching, I have to say that I personally don't think I would as readily reread a book that has caused such an emotional response for me. But that shows that these various reasons for why we give a 5-star read 5 stars doesn't necessarily mean it has to check off all the boxes, because if it does make me cry, that in itself tells me that it deserves a 5-star, probably just because of how devoted I am and just how it just wrecked me but I probably wouldn't reread that book myself. So yeah, thanks Autumn for bringing that perspective in. We also had Manda from Little Bitty Delights gave a really fascinating kind of perspective on saying that a book that informs her or makes her question her own thoughts, question her own expectations, maybe challenges her a bit cerebrally in regards to like what she thinks the world should look like or what she has kind of been programmed by society to think. And I really liked that, and that in itself shows why it's so important to give diverse books a chance, make sure that they are at the front of our bookstores, on display at our libraries, and obviously in our homes, in our own personal libraries, because that is one way that we can challenge ourselves in a bit of a safe space, I suppose, especially when we're talking about fiction or nonfiction as well. You are doing the learning on your own time rather than forcing other people who might not feel comfortable to help you through this process. It's not on them to teach you, to educate you. So I really enjoyed Manda's thoughts on that, and I think that's a great reason for why you might give a book a 5-star, because it's taught you so much about yourself as well and the world around us. I also found this really interesting perspective from someone that I believe just found my post. I don't think that we actually are mutual friends, but if we are, I'm so sorry. Amanda Marie 337, she said that for her, a 5-star read is something that's quite residual in regards to maybe years later, maybe a month or two later. It's just a random Tuesday and you suddenly realize that you adore that book, or you are still thinking about those characters just randomly. Like nothing's prompted it. You just have suddenly remembered how much you loved it. And I really liked that, because I think 5-star reads are the reads that stick with us, especially. Oh my gosh, did you hear that? Anyway, sorry to mess up the mood. Oh, someone outside really had to get where they were going, if you even heard that. So anyway, and yeah, she said that it's an experience that you do forget that you're reading, which I really enjoyed as well. The fact that you don't really think about how time is passing as you're reading this book. You're looking up and suddenly time has passed. You're realizing that you're actually not in this world, but you have just been sitting here with a book that's transported you. So I really enjoyed that. So those are all the reasons that I really think a 5-star read makes sense. And I do have to note that I have to admit that 5 stars are subjective. So like I said kind of earlier, if I didn't give a book a 5-star but someone else did, that in no way means that I'm a harsher rater, that they have lower expectations or lower standards for high quality reading. It's just a subjective process. And on top of that, I think we change as readers throughout the year. For instance, a book that I gave 5 stars maybe this month, if I were to pick that up in 6 months for the first time, or maybe last year, maybe I wouldn't have given it 5 stars. It's important to, just remember that there's not necessarily a guarantee that we would have given a book 5 stars at a different time in our lives, because we change as readers. Our lives impact what we pick up and what we're interested in, and that's why sometimes I end up DNFing books, not because there's anything that I can really pinpoint about the book itself, but I know for a fact this is the wrong time for me, because I'm judging this book from like an emotional, mental space that isn't really giving it a great chance. So let's keep that in mind as we're rating books, because there have been times where I've also reflected months later being like, you know what, that book actually was really good. Or, now that I reflect on it, that book wasn't exactly as great as I thought. I was kind of swept up in it. And so my ratings will fluctuate that way as well. But yeah, so to kind of start off at the highest and then work our way down, I believe that 4 stars are just still great books. I don't understand people who won't read a book because it's been given 4 stars rather than 5 stars, because a 4 book means that we thoroughly enjoyed it, that the plotting was excellent, that there was nothing problematic, or there were no huge plot holes. In reality, it might have just been 1 or 2 scenes that didn't quite, meet our fancy. And so we were like, well, I'm gonna give it 4 stars, even though everything except for maybe one thing was off. Maybe you didn't like a certain character. I think that happens a lot with romance for me, especially. I'll give romances 4 stars a lot, or 3 stars, mainly because there's certain tropes I don't like, which again is very subjective. I don't like the miscommunication trope, which I think a lot of romance readers don't like, or the third act breakup. A lot of times my rating is very much dependent on how that is treated, how the characters get through a certain issue, what the issue actually is, like what did this author come up with to give a reason for why these characters are breaking up, you know, periodically or temporarily until the happily ever after comes in the end. And so I will say that I think that that is very much not also something that you can compare in various other genres. That is the one element in romance that I have to really zero in on and then decide, did I like how that was done? If not, 4 stars. Still loved it, but I can't say that I loved every aspect of it. So yeah, I think that that's important to note, that again, with 4 stars, most of the things are great. So if someone says they give it a 4 star and they're trying to recommend a book to you, you probably should pick it up, especially if they're thinking of you, saying you would love this, then yeah, why not take it up and try it out. So 3 stars are a bit more difficult for me because I also have this issue where if someone gives a book a 3 star, I'm even less likely to pick it up, which is too bad. And that's something I want to change about myself, because when I give a book a 3 star, that means it was fine. It was good. We are so dependent on star ratings a little bit too much lately that, yeah, we think a 3 star must mean it's bad, when it literally, if you look at Goodreads, if you look at Storygraph, it means it was good, that it was a solid book, that I don't regret reading it as well. That's the thing. I think the 3 is the threshold where I don't regret reading that book and up. When we get into 2 and 1, that's a different story, but ratings that get 3 stars or up means I don't regret it, means I did get some enjoyment out of it, that it was a fine read, that I obviously was compelled to finish it as well. And we're going to get into DNFs a bit more too in a second. But yeah, so 3 stars just means it's probably also vibe as well in the opposite direction. I just didn't vibe with it. I didn't vibe with the characters. I found it interesting, but I didn't find it compelling. I didn't feel the urge to put down everything, to kind of ignore my responsibilities, maybe ignore the dishes in my sink for a little bit longer to read this book instead. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I think that if anything, I give a lot of books 3 stars, especially if I'm trying something new. I'm more likely to give books I'm reading 4 or 5 stars, mainly because I know what I'm interested in now these days. The more you read, the more you learn about yourself. So the more likely I'm going to sift through the books that I think are a good chance that I'm going to adore this. So if I don't do that, then it is going to be a 3 star. It's really rare I give 2 or 1 stars, because I usually do DNF those books before I even get to the star rating. And I don't star rate books that I DNF. I think that's important to keep in mind as well. If I do, it's because probably I got to like 75% and then I was like, I can't do this anymore. And then in that case, I think I actually am not necessarily an authority on the subject of this book because I haven't finished the ending, but I read enough of it to feel pretty good about my rating. So getting into that, 2 and 1 star ratings are usually reserved for books that anger me, that frustrate me so much, either because of some decisions by the author that I think were kind of like didn't make any sense, were a bit of a gimmick. One example that I'll give, I haven't given any books, you know, as examples for star ratings yet, so maybe I shouldn't, I don't know, but we're gonna go for it. So Home Before Dark, I recently read that. I put it in one of my wrap-up videos. I can't remember when I read that. Maybe it was February or March. Either way, I was really frustrated by that book, mainly because also I enjoyed it so much up to a point. That's also something to keep in mind as we're rating books. It's dependent on the emotional roller coaster that it goes for. If you are like setting us up for a really fascinating ending, for me really enjoying the rest of the book, and then this one thing completely plummets it, that is so frustrating because we were so close to having a really solid read. Like, I wasn't going to give the book 5 stars, but I probably would have given it 4 for its atmosphere, for it being this really fascinating concept where there's like ghosts, where there's this house that remembers the trauma that's happened. It was just a really eerie, great book until the ending. And the ending just really ruined it for me because of a certain multiple choices that the author made that just, it didn't make sense. It was really frustrating. We were given multiple solutions, and then the one that was selected was actually the worst one, in my opinion. So that's my opinion. People have given Home Before Dark 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars. So this entire discussion is just reminding people of that. So that is one element that I might give a 2 star for, where my expectations were so high up until a certain moment where it just ruined me. It also might be because there's a lot of problematic issues where there might be controversy or like, I think controversy is the worst word to use, because it's just someone who has been implementing their beliefs that are harmful and hateful. I gave an example, I'll give another example, but this one I gave a 1 star because 1 star means I actually would never recommend this book to anyone. I do not support this book being circulated. I would not tell someone that they should read it, like, no matter what, even if I think the plot would be fascinating to them, even if it's a genre they like, if anything under the sun seems perfect for them. There is an element in this book that I just don't think deserves to be circulated. And as a person who reads books and, you know, can give my opinions on that, I think I'm fully in my rights to do that. I'm not going out of my way to tell people not to read this book, but if they came to me and asked me about it, I would tell them don't read it. And if I ever was asked for, you know, opinions to give them recommendations, I would never mention that title because I don't want to do it. So I wouldn't go out of my way to make sure no one reads this book, but I certainly would never have the title come out of my lips again. And so I'm going to mention the book now. The last book I gave a 1 star. I don't do this ever because, again, like I said, I usually stop reading a book immediately if I know I'm just not into it. But it was Headed for a Hearse by Jonathan Latimer, if I remember correctly. This was a hard-boiled noir book that was published, I think, back in the 40s. And it's really a hateful book. The sad thing is the plot is interesting and the mystery was compelling, the solution was fascinating, but there is just so much misogyny, objectification, and racism, literally global racism. No one was safe in this book, and it was honestly appalling that this book got republished. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Those are my ratings for 1 through 5. I think it was Cindy from With Cindy who said this, especially where another reason why I might DNF a book is if it is by someone who is a part of a minority group, so maybe LGBT+, maybe part of the BIPOC community. And if she knows that she's probably going to give this a low rating, more like maybe like less than 3 stars, she'll DNF it so that she doesn't end up giving it a negative rating on Goodreads or Storygraph because of how disadvantaged authors in those communities already are to get their name out, to get a certain percentage of authors who identify in those groups to even get a publisher to take their book on. So I really appreciate that, and I think that's a fascinating perspective. I would love to hear your perspectives on all of this. What are your thoughts about the star ratings? Are you someone who does half ratings, who does quarter ratings, who does do the 10-point scale or uses CAWPILE? Is there a rating system I completely missed? Because I'm sure there is. There's probably a million of them. I want to thank you all who got to the end of the video. I hope this was more conversational. I was hoping that it would be because, I don't know, that's what I was feeling like today. But yeah, thanks everyone. Like, subscribe, consider commenting. I would love for you to comment the rating systems you use, and if what I said for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doesn't match your own beliefs, then please include them so we can talk about it, because that would be really fascinating. So I will see you guys in the next one, and yeah, have a great day. Bye!